The NFL Combine testing drills are underway. You are starting to form all of your opinions for your Dynasty rookie drafts. And earlier this week, we gave you our running back comps for this incoming class. So we're going to transition over to the wide receivers today, give you our thoughts and analysis with what we've seen on film thus far, pair it with what others are saying in the industry, and ultimately land on a few comps for you all. So fellas, let's start with the top prospect in this class. It seems pretty consensus at this point. I've seen a few people trying to get cute with Tet McMillan, but I believe for all of us, he is number one in this class at the wide receiver position. Ty, I'll start with you. Where are we at with Tet McMillan's game? What do we like? What don't we like?
The guy, for his size, being 6'5", 210 pounds, he is a smooth route runner. Like, he is not getting jammed at the line due to his size. He can win with physicality, but he can also win it with shiftiness and quickness off the line as well. And then in the route running, again, he can stack DBs and then he can shake them off. So then he can create windows of separation for his QBs. The other part of his game that I think a lot of people are going to fall in love with really is the highlight reels, the highlight catches, because this dude has as steady hands as you can get, has an unreal catch radius. And anytime there's a jump ball and contested catch opportunity, he's coming down with it. Like, it doesn't matter where the ball is thrown, he's coming down with it. So while not the most athletically or, the most dangerous after the catch, not the speedster or the blazer, the dude makes up for it with his route running and his catching ability. He's the most legit receiver in this class.
Size, vertical body control. Those were the three most important things that I pulled from Tet's film. And I think that sums up a lot of what you were saying. And you pair that with reliable hands then. What else do you like about Tet's game, Cameron?
Yeah, I think he's, like Ty said, he's just so smooth, and that comes across. Daniel Jeremiah pointed it out in his little write-up of his top 50 that he thought, he just doesn't have the quickness or the burst that you like to see, but he's 6'5". So I think, there is that give and take. The only thing people are really going to knock on him is he's not going to be an elite separator, which is right when we talked about, like, Drake London came in, he wasn't an elite separator, but the other side of it, like Quentin Johnson came in, was an elite separator. So it is kind of which side of the coin does he fall on? And I think that's really the only knock you can give him. Because like Ty said, like, just smooth is the best way to describe this guy, because you watch him and you go, there's no way he's actually 6'5". And then you see the ball thrown 15 feet above everyone's head and he goes up and gets it. And the last thing I'll say is he is not afraid to take a hit.
No,
I mean, this guy goes up with reckless abandon and gets hammered and holds onto the ball every single time. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I agree. Just an unbelievable prospect. I would be shocked. I see some of these guys mocking him in the 20s and stuff like that. I'd be shocked if he fell that low.
No, I would be shocked if he falls outside of the top 15. I mean, he is a contested catch freak. 18 contested catches alone in his final season at Arizona. And you mentioned he's not going to be a separator at the next level. I do think that is, like, probably the biggest concern you can knock on him. And I think his releases have a lot to do with that as well. I think there's a decent amount that's left to be desired there. I think you needed more explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. I've seen people question how he's going to beat press coverage. I mean, I get it, but when he's winning in contested situations anyways, those are things that I'm just willing to forgive. But let's land on some comps here now. We've named it. This dude is big. He'll go up and get you any football you throw in his direction. Just won't be able to beat people with his speed despite being smooth. So where do we land on comps? And Ty, I'll start with you.
I tried to get unique. I tried to come up with the non-consensus pro comp, but I couldn't get away from Drake London.
I can't either.
It's the smooth route running for the size, the catching ability. I think Drake London offers a little more after the catch, at least coming out of school. But that being said, I think Tet can be on a very similar trajectory as Drake London, where year two, Drake London kind of came onto the scene as a legit alpha receiver.
Yeah, I could not get away from that Drake London comp either. And to make up for it, I got very creative with my upcoming comps. So we'll have some fun here coming up. But I also went with Drake London. Cameron, you said before the show that yours was going to be a little bit more interesting. You did get creative here.
Yeah, I mixed two players, and the more I think about it, the more I might just be describing Drake London as well. But I think he's somewhere in the mix of Nico Collins and Mike Williams. I think he's got the smoothness of Nico Collins, a little more of the, I think, control over his body than Mike Williams, but he's got the catch point of Mike Williams. And I say control, like Mike Williams is great in the air. He is just not good coming down.
Coming down.
Right. That's he's a crasher, right? Some people land nice. He's a crash. I don't think that's Tet, but I do think he's somewhere in the middle. And I think that's the reason I say that too, is because that's going to kind of determine the trajectory. Is who is he more like? Is he more of the Nico with just the nice, Mike Williams catch point? Or is he more of the Mike Williams can't separate, but he can go get it like Nico, just not the same way that, Mike Williams, Drake London, Mike Evans do.
I can appreciate the creativity in that. If you want more creative, entertaining fantasy football content like this all off season long and into the regular season as well, this is the place you want to be. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well. You will be alerted when all of our newest episodes are up. I promise. You will grow to love being a part of the fellowship here. Because all we do is talk fantasy football, NFL content, best ball content. We go live on Underdog. We're already drafting some of these rookies. So if you want to hang around with the other members of the fellowship, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well. The wide receiver 2 in this class, I do truly think is up for debate for a multitude of different reasons, to which one of those reasons we'll get to later. But I'm just going to transition us into Luther Burden. And he is one where I have seen him very solidified as people's wide receiver 2s. I've also seen it now in mock drafts with Daniel Jeremiah and others where Luther Burden is actually sliding out of the first round, and there are 3-4 other receivers being taken ahead of him. So Ty, I'll start with you again here. Where do you land on Luther Burden?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in that first or second round, because I think you look at the after catchability of Luther Burden and you're like, he's a for sure like first round pick. But when you look at this past year, at least the film from this year, Missouri's offense really, really struggled. And Luther Burden was set on a lot of pre-motion.
That's nice. Ty. That's a nice way to put it.
Thank you. See, I'm a good draft analyst. I don't throw people under the bus. Anyway,
terrible.
Again, like Luther Burden was sent on a ton of pre-snap motions, so you never really got to see like true wins from the line of scrimmage with his release, and then he being able to then separate with his route running. So from the standpoint of like Luther Burden being an absolute weapon in the passing game, I feel like that's half true, because I think we would all say that to be a true weapon in the passing game, you got to have the route running chops, you got to have the release off the line of scrimmage, you got to win with some nuance every once in a while. I think if you want the best picture of Luther Burden, you should watch 2023 tape and not this past year's tape. And I think you will see a much more consistent winner in route running.
Yes.
But again, this past year just did not help him out in the slightest, but you can still get super, super excited because when he gets the ball in his hands, there is some home run ability with this guy.
Yeah, explosive and twitchy. And you do still see that on his film. When you go back and watch this year, it's disappointing, but you don't look at his game and think, what the heck happened? Like, it still seems like the same Luther Burden out there, but I do think it was the nature of this offense that certainly did him no favors in the box score columns. Cameron, what about you? Where are you at on Luther Burden? Are you still in on him in the first round? What do you like? What don't you like? Etc.
Yeah, I think he's probably closer to the end of the first round kind of guy. It's just going to be really interesting how teams decide to utilize him in the NFL, right? Because like Ty said, he had just such a defined role at Missouri, but that's not necessarily what he should be in the NFL. You know, we talked about it last time with these running backs like Quinshon Judkins, defined role, your short yardage, early down guy. He did that in college. That's probably going to translate to the NFL. Luther Burden, right? It was a lot of gimmicks, a lot of screens, sweeps, and stuff like that. He can do that well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what he needs to do in the NFL. So, you know, I just think he's going to be interesting either way. I think at the end of the day, though, he's an athlete. And like Ty said, whoever takes him is just going to find a way to get the ball in his hands, whether it's down the field or like it was in college. That's kind of where the question lies.
Yeah, he's shown flashes of being great at all three levels. And he had like surprisingly really good deep ball tracking as well. So I really do hope a team in the NFL doesn't just pigeonhole him to the slot.
Yep.
That's really what I'm concerned ends up happening with Luther Burden. That's one of the cons I have listed for him. And my comp kind of plays into that as well. But maybe let's land on some comps here and tie in why we see those comps. Ty, I'll start with your comp here. Who do you have?
I've got Deebo Samuel.
Shut up.
Do you have Deebo Samuel?
I have Deebo Samuel if he never played under Kyle Shanahan.
Boom. Heck yeah.
I told you I was thinking some of these, but
that's exactly how I felt. Like the dude, you want to get the ball in his hands all the time, if possible. But there are aspects of his game where you're like, man, like we could see some games where he's just not a factor at all. And that's just because he's, like Cam was saying, like he's not on the right system where we might see a lot more inconsistencies, or it's just a bad defensive matchup. And they're, I'll end it there. Deebo Samuel is my comp.
And the only reason why I said if he never played under Kyle Shanahan is I don't want us to just start throwing out Deebo Samuel comps because he was used so uniquely under Kyle Shanahan. He's getting handoffs, he's getting all these creative touches, and like I don't want people to just think that's what we're calling Luther Burden. The point is that he is a yak monster. You get the ball into his hands anywhere near the line of scrimmage or even downfield in open space. 30 forced missed tackles. This dude is tough to bring down. He will absolutely feast in space if you give him the ball. So I like the Deebo comp. I just wanted to make sure I threw in the caveat of, hey, he's probably not going to get these running back touches or wacky looks that Kyle Shanahan gives him. So
he might though.
He might if he lands in the right situation. He has to land in the right situation for that though. Like he's got to land with a creative enough of a play caller who's ballsy enough to actually get him those touches.
I mean, because Cam, not to take up more time from your comp, but we're talking, you threw out like late first round. So like if he goes to like Pittsburgh, if he goes to the Chargers, I'm not a huge fan of Luther Burden in those situations. But if he goes to the Rams, if you trade away Cooper Kupp and you bring in, you bring in Luther Burden, like, I like that. Even if you go to Baltimore, even though Baltimore doesn't exactly have like, alpha wide receiver for fantasy football, results, they will find a way to get him the ball in space. Detroit would be interesting too. I know they don't have Ben Johnson, but like, there's a lot of destinations where I think Luther Burden will get utilized in different ways, but there are some other spots like, again, the Chargers or the Steelers where he's just not going to be a great fit.
Go ahead, Cam. You can throw in your comp here now.
Yeah, I don't mind the Deebo one. He's just a little bit smaller than Deebo is my only thing. So right, but that's like you said, the between the tackle stuff you're not going to see from Luther Burden. That's strictly a Deebo being 225, maybe 230 pounds this last season. But I think he's a little more cleaner of a route runner. I am as a slightly bigger Brandon Cooks. I think that he is. I was going to say I'm comparing him to a non-active player, but surprise to many, Brandon Cooks is still an active player. But he's he's shifty, he's quick, he makes things happen. Brandon Cooks, obviously returned kicks for a little while, good in open space. I think Burden might be a little bit better of a yak man too. But that was just kind of who I saw watch Burden.
Not to spoil one of my comps for later, but I compare another player on our list to Brandon Cooks later. So it'll be interesting to compare and contrast what we saw on film. Let's move it on. Again, Emeka Egbuka, he is either your wide receiver 2 or your wide receiver like 6 in this class. And like he's safely in that range. I feel like Luther Burden is your wide receiver 2 or your wide receiver like 8. I think Emeka's range of outcomes feels a little bit close together based on what I've seen across the Twitterverse, which sometimes isn't all that helpful. But Cam, I'll start with you here. I personally, I really like Emeka's film. I believe I was chatting with Ty after the running back episode when we were talking about potentially who we're going to be comping these wide receivers to for this next episode. I kind of like my comp. I'm a fan of Emeka Egbuka. I think he's going to translate well at the next level. But what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, he just gets open. Like I think that's the best way to describe him. You watch him. He's strong and he's a bigger slot guy. I think that's kind of the way the NFL is translated. I mean, he's not like the big slot guy necessarily, but 6'1", 205. He's going to be able to make things happen. He's not going to be your down the field threat by any means. You're not going to throw him on the outside to burn people. But I do think he can play in 2 wide receiver sets.
Yeah.
as well at the next level. I don't think he's going to be pigeonholed to only being kind of a slot player. But yeah, I think that's just really what it comes down to is that consistency. I think everyone's going to knock him of he's never been the best wide receiver on his team. Well, every single year he had a top 3 wide receiver in the nation on his team. Like, I mean, he has Jeremiah Smith this year, who's a freshman and still the best wide receiver in college football. So you know what? I don't care about that one at all. I think he's very solid. I think he's a first round pick personally.
Yep.
He would be he is my wide receiver 2 with a caveat. And I'll mention my caveat on a different player.
I do agree. I do think Emeka is my wide receiver 2 as of right now. You mentioned a lot of things that I love about him. It's the technical and savviness at which the technicality and the savviness at which he runs his routes. He's got pro level footwork already. And you mentioned you don't have to just pigeonhole him to the slot. That's where he's going to succeed. But he does have really good long speed. He can track the ball downfield as well. So he can win at all 3 levels. That doesn't come without his cons, obviously, which we'll get to momentarily. But Ty, maybe I'll let you chime in first here on your thoughts.
No, I think Egbuka is really the do-it-all receiver. And I've said before, he can do everything, but he doesn't really have a trump card that, like, if he is struggling in a game, like, he can rely on something. So I think that has its downfalls, you could say. I think the other thing is too, like you said, Egbuka isn't the game breaker with his speed, and he's not super twitched up or anything like that, but he makes up for that with savviness and smoothness. So again, it's kind of take what you can get with Egbuka. I think he's going to be one of the safer receivers in this class.
I will just throw this out into the universe. I'll pray for it later. I'll pray for it now too. I want him to end up with the Houston Texans, man. I really do. I love the fit to be there with CJ Stroud end of the first round. You don't have Tank Dell this year. You got Steph Diggs hitting free agency post ACL. That's like my dream landing spot for Emeka. Let's talk about comps here, though. Talk about all the things that we like. Maybe before we do that, anything that you all specifically didn't like? I mean, I think the physicality is the weakness for me. Not physical off the line of scrimmage. I think he does have limited experience against press coverage. That's like my big concern. Any other concerns either of you want to toss out there? Just so we cover the entire scale of these receivers.
I think it's just a worry that he'd be a little capped just without having that top end speed to be, from a fantasy perspective, to just be that, he's going to all of a sudden break into the top 10, top 7 conversation. I just don't know if he's got the top end speed to kind of make that conversation.
Yeah. Anything on your end, Ty?
No, I was going to say the speed. Like, it's good. It's not great. It's good enough.
Yeah, good enough, I think, is a good way to put it. So let's land on some comps then. This is another one I got. I had a little bit of fun with this one, I'll admit, but Cam, I'll start with you. Where's your comp?
I'm calling him Chris Godwin light. I think.
Oh, shut up!
No, okay, for different reasons. Okay, go ahead, because this is going to be hilarious when we come back to these comps. So go ahead.
Are you all? I hope not. All right. So he doesn't, like I said, he doesn't quite have the speed of Chris Godwin. Was a 4.4 guy, 4.42 guy. So he, super fast. He's always been quick. Obviously, injuries have slowed him down a little bit. I think the hands are good. I don't think they're Chris Godwin level. So I think it's like, if you just took Chris Godwin, just dialed everything down a teeny little bit, right? I think that's what you get with the Emeka Egbuka.
Okay, Ty. So where are you?
Chris Godwin.
Okay, Chris Godwin without the light.
Without the light, because I know that the speed may not be there with Chris Godwin, but I think the play speed is a little bit better than what the 40 may actually show. So I think Chris Godwin, both guys that are super smooth, that are going to be immediate contributors no matter where they land. Again, there will be some downsides to their game. They may not be like true number 1 alpha wide receivers, but again, very, very good and very solid players.
So I didn't have Chris Godwin, but I had the light version of another player. So when you said Chris Godwin light, I'm like, I also used light. JSN light. That's what this screams to me with Emeka. You look at their film, and I'm not doing it because it's the Ohio State connection, right? I'm not that lazy. But like when I look at Emeka's tape, it's not quite as good as JSN's, but I look at it, it's like he could get to a point where he's just on par with JSN, which is a compliment to Emeka, right? So I think he does a lot of the same things that JSN does really well. Just not quite there yet, but I think he absolutely has the potential to get there, especially if he lands on a team like the Houston Texans, ends up getting CJ Stroud back as his quarterback. I think that could be a ton of fun to watch, and you're just getting another JSN kind of player on your team. All right, we've discussed the top 3 prospects, fellas. Maybe not the top 3. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's take a break first before we get there. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We've talked about and drawn comps for Tet McMillan, Luther Burden, and Emeka Egbuka. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, where's Travis Hunter? He's right here, okay? We'll have the Travis Hunter conversation. When we were planning this episode earlier this week, I said, let's keep it a wide receiver discussion with Travis Hunter. There's so much buzz about him being a cornerback and a lot of teams seeing him as a cornerback. And all it took was for 36 hours for that entire narrative to be flipped on his head. And now the majority of NFL teams, it seems like, are viewing Travis Hunter as a wide receiver. So I'm lost. Originally, I thought he would be playing, 90% of his snaps at cornerback and another 10% at wide receiver at the next level. Now I don't know what to think. So Cameron, I'll let you start. Where do you think Travis Hunter actually ends up at the next level?
I don't know. I personally thought he was going to be a corner who plays some wide receiver. I think that's just more natural for guys to start with corner and go to wide receiver, just because I think corner is, to me, I think it's the most technical position, just because everything has to be so perfect, especially against these wide receivers. It's all about the hips, baby. Quick hips. But we need to make that a sound. But yeah, I don't blame teams though at the same time, because you watch this guy play and everything he does is just fluid. Like, it's just so at his own pace, right? It's sometimes he is unbelievably fast. Sometimes he takes it slow, right? You're not going to knock him off really what he wants to do. I think that's what's made him so special. And then he's also another guy who's got a great catch radius, right? I mean, he just goes up and he just snags everything. So yeah, I think he's going to be incredibly talented at either side. I hope he plays wide receiver from a fantasy perspective, but as a team, it'd be hard not to put him at corner as well.
And how much of that is going to be team dependent, do you think? Like, you look at some of the top teams, Travis Hunter doesn't fall out of the top 5. There's no question. I look at some of those teams, I'm like, they could use him on both ends, honestly. Yeah. Like, they got holes to fill out both sides of the ball. The one thing, I put down a bunch of notes on Travis Hunter. I absolutely loved his wide receiver film, but the thing I landed on is this dude is just the pure definition of an athlete. I mean, that's when you watch it, you think, if there is a pinnacle of athletes, like Travis Hunter is pretty darn near the top of that. Ty, you want to pile anything on here? Because Travis Hunter is such a fun watch on both sides of the ball.
He's got to be one of, if not the best players in this draft. I mean, I think a lot of people have now kind of decided that Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are kind of head and shoulders above everyone else in this draft. I think there's an argument that Travis is the best, because for the production and the play on both sides of the ball. Again, he won the Heisman, not just because he's the cardio king that he can play literally the entire game. No, it's because he's dominating on both sides of the ball. So I think my favorite part about Travis Hunter is that once he gets the ball in his hands, at least from a receiver, he plays like it's 7-on-7. And so it's incredibly fun to watch. And this year at corner, he did get better. Like 2023 corner was, it left a lot to be desired. This year he improved a lot. So I think that's why a lot of the cornerback talk is sticking.
He just does so much well at the wide receiver. But again, I don't want to get too deep into the cornerback talk, because this is a wide receiver video, right? We want to make sure we stay on par with the wide receiver. Excellent in space, great hands at the catch point, as you mentioned, Cameron. He changes tempo so well in his routes. He has awesome tops. It's it's just he's such a fun watch on both sides of the ball. 185. I want to see what he weighs in at. That's going to be a big thing for me. Because I think if you get him into space, he's fine, but he doesn't have that toughness after the catch. He's not going to shed many tackles afterwards. But let's land on a comp here if we even can, because this is just a literal, as Hayden Winks has said on the Underdog Football Show, he is a generationally unique prospect where it is difficult to pin one comp on him. So we're going to do our best here. I got creative with mine. I frankly don't think it does it justice at all, especially with the player that I use. Gucci Devonta Smith. That's where I landed from like a wide receiver perspective. And I say Gucci because I do think Travis Hunter could end up being a better receiver than Devonta Smith in the NFL. And he's just a better all-around athlete, in my opinion. So that's where I landed. Gucci Devonta Smith. Cam, where's your comp?
I went with the former player. I did go with Odell Beckham Jr. I think that from the perspective of when I watch them play, I really see them playing, like I said earlier, at their own speed. Yeah. I see them taking it like it's more about a feeling, right? When you're watching, you can tell that they both play the wide receiver position by feel. And I think for Hunter, a lot of that comes from playing corner because they play, he plays corner the same way. And he's setting the guy up and he's taking advantage of it. And when I watch Odell, I see a lot of the same thing there. I obviously, Odell had one of one hands, so I'm not going to say Travis Hunter has his hands necessarily, but just the kind of the fluidity that they play going back and forth. And I did mention a caveat earlier. Hunter, if he plays wide receiver, was that caveat. I do think he's probably the 1B, maybe even the 1A with Tet.
Sure. Yeah, right. Well, and that's exactly it, right? Where we don't know. It seems like Tet's kind of consensus one, but like Travis Hunter, for a lot of people, if he does play wide receiver, he is the number one wideout in this class for a lot of people, and he is for Ty. So Ty, where's your comp then?
My comp, Lucas, you're gonna like this one. It's CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's not the same size. Like CeeDee Lamb was 200 pounds. Travis Hunter might weigh in at 175, so it's probably more comparable. It's probably more comparable then to a Devonta Smith, like you said, Lucas. But again, from the route running to the release to the after catch ability, all of it, I'm just like, golly, we're getting CeeDee Lamb 2.0. And that, again, when I think CeeDee Lamb, I'm like, I would, even if CeeDee Lamb was capable of playing corner, I wouldn't play him at corner because I think he's just that dynamic of a receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Ty, did you name where you think he plays at the next level? I know Cam talked about, like, it seems like he's leaning towards the wide receiver at this point.
I did not. I do think teams will have him play corner at first. And if he struggles at corner, I think he will then make the full transition to receiver.
When we go through our wide receiver rankings, I'll let people know where I think Travis Hunter ends up playing. That'll tell in my my dynasty rankings. I'm not ready to plant my flag on either one yet. At the beginning of the week, I was very ready to plant my flag on. I do think he plays corner at the next level, but we'll get through combine week first, and we'll maybe get some more buzz, and that might help me form my decision a little bit better. Next wide receiver we want to talk about, this is a guy who people are kind of getting nutty about. I'm not going to lie. I will say when I went back and watched Matthew Golden's film, I was pleasantly surprised. And Ty, you made the comment in our group chat. This guy's deserving of the hype he's getting right now. So what do you like about Matthew Golden?
This is the route runner that if you're looking for someone outside of the top 3, top 4, right, if you're going to include Travis Hunter, if you're looking for the route runner, it's Matthew Golden through and through. Like there is a ton of patience. There's a lot of DB setup in his routes. There's a lot of twitchiness and burst then to get out of his breaks then to really truly separate himself from those DBs. He does have slightly better after the catch ability than some of these other top guys as well. Though the production is probably going to be the biggest downfall is that like Matthew Golden transferred in from Houston where he went back-to-back years with 38 catches and just only racked up 58 in his 1 year with Texas. So the production profile isn't there. So there is a bit of a risk with Matthew Golden. But again, if you're just looking for in and out route runner that's going to be able to get open on all levels of the field, it's going to be Matthew Golden.
The dude can fly too. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
He changes tempo so well. He sells his breaks to gain that separation in his route running. But if you want him to fly downfield, ask him to run a go route he will. And he'll beat any flat footed defender along the way. So yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised with those elements of Matthew Golden's game. Cam, where are you at on him?
Yeah, I think the college football playoffs obviously helps him a ton. I think that's going to be the rise of his draft stock. I could honestly see him being this year's Jahan Dotson in the fact of like draft night, we're sitting there and all of a sudden it's like pick 15 and maybe not that high, but
Well,
you're like,
forget
oh,
Packers.
Matthew Golden, holy cow, was not, wasn't ready, just because some team absolutely falls in love because there is a lot to fall in love with. I mean, he's great when he gets up in the air. Though, I mean, the
Yeah.
way he can move his body, he can torch it to get to the ball is impressive. Like you said, he's a very polished route runner. Would have been interesting to see him, without Quinn Ewers, with a different quarterback to see, how special he could have been. But from what you saw, he's definitely a late riser in the college football year, and I think he's just gonna continue to kind of win the hearts of people, especially if puts up impressive combine numbers.
So I need to ask this question though, because when I was watching his film, I had this concern. I shouldn't say had this concern. I drew a parallel, and not such a dynamic parallel, but to another Texas wide receiver that I fell in love with last year. Um, I want to make sure. Is there times where Matthew Golden like takes his foot off the gas, or just like doesn't fully sell his route if he doesn't think it's open?
I saw a little bit of that.
Did either of you see that? I'm just making sure I don't get AD Mitchell again. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think the difference is that AD Mitchell.
There's a difference. Yes, obviously. Right.
I would give the route running edge to Matthew Golden here. And I think Golden had a little bit more speed. That definitely will make a difference compared to AD Mitchell, where like you could have DBs run with you and then he could, bail you out with his hands. But I think Golden here, because of the speed, I think I'm willing to give him the pass. But I think the other conclusion that we can draw, right, because you brought up AD Mitchell and the fact that like we're taking the gas off of, or we're taking the foot off the gas a little bit with some of these routes when the ball's not really going to be coming our way. I think we can safely say now that it's a Texas thing and that it's not all receivers that play at Texas, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. No, and I wasn't, and again, that's not my comp. I'm not trying to draw parallels between the two, but that was like a big thing with AD Mitchell last year, right? Was like, when the dude knows the ball isn't coming his way, he takes his foot off the gas. But when he knows the ball is coming his way, oh my gosh, it is magic. It is so much fun to watch. So that was just one thing I picked up on. Again, I don't want to overly penalize Matthew Golden for that, but again, I think you both kind of pointed this out as well. Super athletic, but I think his frame is going to be limiting off the line of scrimmage and dealing with press coverage. So you want more physicality there, but he's so athletic and such a polished route runner that at the same time, you're not willing to hold that to such a strong degree or such a strong stake against him. Let's talk about comps then. And I will say this, since I mentioned earlier, one of my comps was going to be to Brandon Cooks, and Matthew Golden is Brandon Cooks for me.
Interesting.
Interesting. Okay, so where do you land then, Ty?
I think I could get clowned for this one, honestly, after the year he just had. I gave him Terry McLaurin.
Okay, interesting.
Like, I know that he's definitely not again, Matthew Golden.
Sure about that?
Average. I know. I see where
I
you're
don't
at.
hate it actually. You just because you let it up like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Terry McLaurin has probably got 15, 20 pounds on him. So he doesn't have the same play strength as Terry McLaurin. But if you're again, just looking for a ultra consistent guy that a QB can rely on, I can draw that similarity between the two.
Where do you land, Cameron? Where's your comp?
Mine's Chris Olave. I just think kind of similar to the Terry. It's funny because Chris Olave, looking back on it, was compared to Terry McLaurin coming out of college. So it's very similar to Ty's, right? He's just going to be consistent. He's going to make the catches that you need him to make. He's a good route runner. He probably will turn into a quarterback's best friend, but at the same time, he gets stuck on a bad team, where he just doesn't have good quarterback play. You could be left with a lot to be desired from the fantasy perspective.
100%. the way I want to close this out is similar to how we did with the running backs. We talk about kind of the top 5 consensus guys across the industry, and we'll close it out here with 3 individual players that we each want to touch on. And Cameron, I'll start with you because the player that you're going to touch on is someone that I love his film. He's definitely going to be a wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6 in this class, depending on where Travis Hunter ends up, right? But all that aside, tell us a little bit about Tre Harris, because he is slowly becoming a Twitter darling, which in some ways kind of concerns me too.
Yeah, I for sure. I mean, we'll throw it up, here in a little bit. A little tweet from a pal, Debro, of just his love for Tre Harris, and we love Debro. And so,
we love Debro.
I'm not using it to clown him, but just to show you, like, people are truly like falling for this guy. I gotta be honest. I dug into the film some more, and I am falling to Ty's side here.
Sure.
I am falling over to Ty's side a little. I'm a little more pessimistic. Now, obviously, it was a limited amount of games that he played. One of the worries for me is the schedule that he played. I know he played great against LSU, so don't get me wrong. 7 catches, 102 yards.
As was noted by many on the Twitterverse.
Yes. The other issue is the rest of his games were Furman, Middle Tennessee State, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, and South Carolina. So it's like people will throw out, he had 225 receiving yards in a game, 176, 179. Well, that was against Furman, Georgia Southern, and Kentucky. So it's like good, but not good. My worry, and this was what I put in our group chat, was, have you guys ever seen him run full speed? Because I have when he has the ball in his hands. I just don't know if I've seen him give 100% effort on a route. And that was kind of my concern. It was just kind of a little more lazy, right? He can make the big play. But I just don't know. That was what worried me a little bit watching Tre Harris.
So where'd you land on a comp then? AJ Brown, right? We're just going to make the lazy.
Yes.
Just kidding.
No, you already brought up this guy, actually. I went AD Mitchell. Because I thought the similar concerns of not full effort, right? He can be a dynamic player when he gets the ball, but is it how? It's just I don't know, how is it necessarily going to translate to the next level? Is he going to kind of be that guy? Obviously, AD Mitchell, we don't know how it translates because he went on the worst passing team and became the instant wide receiver 3 or 4. So it was like, we won't see AD Mitchell truly. Maybe ever, or until Colts kind of get the quarterback situation figured out. But I see a lot of similarities with Tre Harris.
That's fascinating. And even you can draw the concerns around that as well. I don't know if my concerns around that lead me to as deep a pessimism, but I think that was the one thing where again, we brought this up when we were brainstorming these episodes and coming up with it. I'm like, Tre Harris, I think I'm really starting to like him. The problem is the pendulum is swinging so far in the direction of loving Tre Harris that I'm like, well, okay, hold on. That doesn't come without its flaws. That doesn't come without its concerns as well. Like, I'm seeing people, again, I don't remember if it was the Debro tweet, but it's like, I'm seeing Tre Harris in the wide receiver 2 conversation. I'm thinking, holy smokes. Like, I like Tre Harris. I don't like Tre Harris that much though. For me, it is Tet, Luther, Emeka, Matthew Golden, and then I think we can have a conversation about Tre Harris. And again, Travis Hunter, whether he plays wide receiver or not, I'm just leaving him out until I make a full-blown decision there. But I'll quit jabbering. I want to talk. Well, I shouldn't say I'll stop jabbering because I'm going to go ahead and talk about my player. We're saving maybe the most juicy bit for last. So maybe to add some fuel to what Ty has to say at the end. Jayden Higgins is a fascinating prospect for me. I think I like Jayden Higgins more than the consensus does. That doesn't mean I'm like outright insanely in on him, but for 6'4", he's a smooth route runner and has actually really good hands and just really good football IQ in general. You can line him up as the X and the Z or the slot. You can line him up anywhere, and he's got enough football IQ to go out and make a play and understand the route tree for you. That being said, it is a limited route tree that he has. I think he has the football IQ to take on more, but it's really going to depend on what teams see the role that he can fill for them. I love that he takes advantage of his size on his breaks out of the route. and obviously for a 6'4", 6'3", 6'4" guy, you love the great ball tracking and positioning when he goes up and gets a contested catch for you as well. He's a 6'7" wingspan. I mean, the dude is going to go up and get you one. So Jayden Higgins, the comp here for me is a Cedric Tillman kind of player, where I do think there's a fluidity to his game. He's not going to be anything phenomenal at the next level. He doesn't have that second gear speed. He doesn't have that awesome acceleration that you want to see, but there's enough fluidity. There's enough football IQ there where, he can play a decent role at the next level. I just don't think it's ever going to amount to, like an elite wide receiver one on a team. Obviously, I think he can play a very serviceable role as a wide receiver two, or like luxury wide receiver three for a team. Either of you two have like any convicting thoughts on Jayden Higgins? Ty, I know you kind of like him.
Yeah, I comped him to a Walmart Cortland Sutton. I think Cortland Sutton was able to. I think Cortland Sutton had a unique ability to develop the route tree that Jayden Higgins and some of these taller, bigger receivers that are coming out of school don't necessarily have that capability.
Yep.
But I think there are very similar, facets to their games that make me go, you know what, Jayden Higgins could probably stick at an X, but it's going to take some time for him to truly be, kind of an impact player.
100%. I I like the Walmart Cortland Sutton. I also think that's a really good direction to go as well. I'm really curious to hear your comp on this last guy, Ty, because the comps are getting way out of hand with this last player. Look, we're not trying to tear into the Twitterverse. There's a lot of people we respect on Twitter. It offers a lot of great nuggets, right? We're going a little bit too crazy on Jack Bech, man. Plain and simple. So Ty, go ahead. Provide like the positives, because I don't think there's, well, it's not just all bad with Jack Bech, but also the comps are just getting stupid.
Yeah, I saw a very strong and physical receiver that plays that way in all facets of the game, whether it came to route running, whether it came to catching the ball after the catch, run blocking. The dude is strong and he's physical. That being said, though, he is as average can get when it comes to route running and separating. There is not a whole lot of meat on the bone. I also don't think that there's a lot of room to improve, and partially because of his size. I believe you guys can fact check me on this, and slightly asking you to. I'm pretty sure he's a converted wide receiver, that he was formerly an undersized tight end, and now he's playing receiver full time. So that definitely can set a precedent, that can set a precedent for the kind of receiver that we're talking about with Mr. Bech. I've heard it both ways.
I've been saying I've heard it both ways as well, but I can't confirm your note. Previously played tight end in college.
Interesting. So again, I think we're talking about just a very average route runner that is very strong at the catch point, that can make some highlight catches because he's just unfazed by tight coverage in congested areas. But when it comes to after the catch, he's really just a fighter. There is nothing really special about him. There is just no lateral movement to his game. He is the perfect definition of a guy with great footwork, but a guy that struggles with changing direction because of his size. So ultimately, there are a lot of people out there that comp him to Puka Nacua because of the feistiness and the strength at catch point.
Please stop.
No, we need the John Gruden face coming up. Nicey. Yeah, that's what we need right now. That's what
He's gonna have a couple nicey catches in his career. I can guarantee you that. But my comp is Jawan Jennings.
Sure.
I think two guys that possess size, enough route running chops. I think Jawan Jennings offers a little more after the catch with a little more wiggle. But I think, again, when you compare the route running and strength at the catch point, it's Jawan Jennings, and definitely not Puka Nacua, because Puka struggled with injuries in college and is faster in the better route runner.
Jawan Jennings is a respectable comp. I mean, do we not see what he's doing for the 49ers? I mean, sure, Juwan Jennings if you never played for Kyle Shanahan, but like, whatever, right? Hey, Juwan Jennings is a respectable comp. Why can't we get respectable with these comps instead of just wanting to try and be right about the next Puka Nacua? Because that just feels, I hate that. Personally, I hate that because it feels like we're reaching, right? It's like CeeDee Lamb is like, when we're talking about Travis Hunter, that's a special athlete we're talking about. When we're talking about special productive athletes on the next level, you got to make sure all the traits are there for that. I just don't see that with Jack Bech when we're trying to draw that Puka comparison. Anything you want to pile on to that, Cameron?
I thought for sure you're going to go with Minnesota State legend Shane Zylstra as your cap, but we can stick with Juwan Jennings.
That's where we'll.
90% of the audience doesn't even know who that is.
No,
that's all right.
I would even 90 is probably generous. I would even say like 98 probably doesn't even know. Oh man. For that alone, you should be subscribed to the channel and hit that notification bell as well. So you can get
deep ball knowledge.
You pull it. Guys naming dudes here on the YouTube channel and podcast feed. So again, make sure to subscribe, turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest videos are up. Make sure you follow our other socials as well. FFL is on Twitter, DFFL is on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you want even more fun tidbits of information, retweets of things we find on the Twitterverse, I am at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw FFF for Cameron, and Tyler_Plath for Ty. The NFL Combine, we mentioned it at the top. It's happening right now. We're going to come back next week. We're going to tell you what results actually matter from the NFL Combine. And then I'm pulling up the schedule right now because I know we have another thing scheduled there. We're going to go ahead and predict the NFL free agency next week as well. So we got a couple of fun episodes there where I think we're going to have some really fun discussion. Hopefully not get clowned for where we predict NFL free agents to land, everything of the sorts. But some entertaining content for you all next week. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, y'all. We'll see you then. Deuces.
Deuces.